And we're
And
live.
we're live. We're live. Hello, everyone. Glad to meet you all again. I hope you had a nice week without us. I was on holiday, so obviously it was my fault if the stream didn't happen. It's always the French's fault. You can always blame us. So once again, I'm joined today with dear Jennifer Dawe. Hi, Jen.
Hi.
I'm glad to find you here again. And I have Jen's colleague with us tonight, I should say, Jason Brown. Hello, Jason.
Hello, hello, hello.
I said colleague, but maybe boss should be the best word. I don't know if I'm
Yeah.
inappropriate by saying merely colleague. Glad to have you on board. I heard a lot about you, a lot of very, very positive things about you, obviously. Jen always says nice stuff about you.
Well, I'm an amazing guy, so it would be strange if she said anything negative.
Yeah, obviously. I do hope. I do hope she has only nice things to say about you. You are working with her on the game Seedscape. Obviously, people. Just mentioning the fact that the chat is finally apparently working, and it didn't work before. No idea why. As usual, Google, YouTube, this kind of stuff. Anyway, it works now. And you're working on Seedscape with Jennifer. That's what people know Jennifer best for, I suppose. And I'd like you to tell us a little bit about yourself and your position on the project.
Well, as people will notice, I'm actually sitting here doing the art today because I do everything, because I've spent probably the last 15 years of my life just learning every single skill related to game dev. So
Impressive.
I can do 2D art, I can do 3D art, I can do programming, I can do pretty much everything with some level of finesse. And yeah, I created Seedscape a few months before. Well, I guess maybe
It
around
was a while.
maybe like 6 months to a year before I sort of lost track of it at one point because it was going to be too big of a thing to tackle by myself. And then because when I started Seedscape, it was in 3D, and I wasn't going to be able to do all the 3D art by myself and program the whole thing. So I kind of dropped it, and then when I picked it up later, I brought Jennifer on because she could at least, we could switch the game into 2 dimensions and then have her do all the art for it, and at least then we could sort of get it done and out the door. So, and she's been just sort of plugging away at all the art. That way I don't have to worry about it.
She's putting a lot of weight off your shoulders.
Yeah, and also she takes most of the marketing stuff off my shoulders, which I'm not really good at anyways, because I seem to have trouble reaching people as a general rule.
Yeah, it's always complicated to try to be the artist, the developer, and the PR guy at the same time. Definitely.
And that's like one of the most neglected places for indie devs is like they don't have time left at the end of everything to do that too.
Oh yeah. It's like out of the question that I would be able to also like answer emails and play around on Twitter if I'm also doing the art and the programming and everything. It's just not possible.
Yeah, a question I have about that is how can when you get into art, when you get into making something, into creating something, you tend to forget a little bit of the PR part, of the marketing side of things, because you're so busy and so focused on the creating. And at the same time, when you're in the marketing part of the work, it's a bit difficult to go back to creating. Like it's such a devised, they're two devised notions to me. Marketing really is so far away from creating, and creating is so far away from marketing, that when you're in one specific part of the entire process, it's difficult to balance it out with the other one. Do you find it difficult yourself as well?
Well, it's just a matter of, marketing is kind of, it's almost the exact opposite of, for me, of creating, because marketing is like you're people pleasing, whereas when I'm creating stuff, I'm only pleasing myself, and I don't really care what other people think about necessarily what I'm making. So I would sit for like hours making something that I want to make, and then the idea that I would have to then go out onto like a social network and kind of tell people what they want to hear, I'm not really good at that. So like, so I'm just not good at the whole people pleasing aspect of it, because I only really know how to please myself, basically. So I think some people just can't do marketing, and I think I'm one of those people.
Well, I think like a lot of people make the mistake where they don't plan for something to be marketable, so then they end up eating marketing, if that makes sense. Whereas I think we both tend to focus on making things marketable, and then I just kind of use them as marketing. I think that's actually a big advantage between the two of us. It's just that like I do keep other people in mind when I make stuff, but it's more like I keep in mind how I'm going to have to put it out to people when I'm making it. So like there's usually a compromise. Like it's fine to start off and just be like, I'm making this for me, but then you can have somebody else come along and be like, well, if we tweaked it this way, it'd more appeal to this audience or that audience, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I mean we've seen what sort of happens when I try to just do what I want to do and then ignore everything else and live in a bubble for like a year, which is that I miss out on a lot of feedback, which doesn't help anything really.
Yeah, definitely. You can afford to do that when you're a highly respected artist in your specific field. You can pretty much do anything you want in that case, to be fair. But yeah, when you're an indie, I don't ever know how to pronounce this word. Independent developer, or developer, or movie maker, or whatever else. You have a lot of rules and codes to adhere to most of the time, really. You have to follow some sort of way to promote yourself, to promote your work, really, and more it tends to as well shift towards being able to promote yourself on social media and all of that. That's what's really relevant recently. Yeah.
There's also the thing that nobody likes to talk about, which is that it's way easier for me as a girl to reach people than it is for him. That's an unfortunate part of it, which is why I think it's funny.
Yeah, let's talk about the thirst factor, shall we?
Yes. The thirst factor is always real. And it's just like, it's not that people don't like me as a person, it's just that women tend to be more approachable, and people who say that like we don't have an intense advantage in the game industry are just fooling themselves, because I'm just like, hey, I'm a woman doing a thing, and people are like, oh look, a woman doing a thing. I'm like, well actually this is not my thing, it's his thing, but I'm working on this thing. And they're like, yeah, but it's your thing. I'm like, no.
Don't downplay your role, Jennifer.
Yeah. No, well, and that's just it, right? Like, it's either I did everything myself and I'm the only one that matters, or I didn't do anything. Like, there's no in between.
Well, yeah, I mean, we've talked about this a lot in private, where it's like there's sort of this frustrating thing people will do where, because the first misconception people have is that Jennifer's making the entire game by herself, and then they discover that I even exist, and they're like, whoa, I didn't know there was someone else working on this game. It's like, well, yeah, and I'm not just someone else, like I'm the guy who started making the game. And so, but then they go from that misunderstanding to where they start going, whoa, so Jennifer only does the art? It's like, well, don't say only, because that's really important. So like, just because she's not programming doesn't mean it's not important. But they're sort of disappointed because in their head, they had it in their head that like Jennifer was like this like deity, that she could do everything like at once, and now like that whole illusion for them is kind of shattered.
Oh, well, I
So-
mean, maybe I could, but it would take me like 10 years. So,
Well, yeah.
and that's exactly why you didn't do it either.
Right, that's why I stopped, because nobody can really sustain such a thing. I mean, even think about like games where people actually do that, like Dwarf Fortress. He still doesn't really do that because he doesn't make any art for the game. It's all text. So
Right.
so he found a way to do it to where he wouldn't have to put forth all that extra work to, you know.
If you have a specific talent and you like the other ones, well, you find a way. You can only find a way. That's you have
I
to
think the
focus on what you're
confusion.
talented on.
I think the confusion also came in because I do program, but I am not programming this one. You know, like that's hard for people to understand that, like, when you do everything, like sometimes you're like, I'm not going to do that on this project because I'm not qualified at XYZ type of gameplay. Like, I make like platformers and puzzle games myself sometimes, but like this kind of RPG simulator thing is out of my scope.
Yeah, I mean, I've even had to learn a lot more stuff just to be able to. I mean, making this project has been out of my abilities to program, but so I've just had to learn to adapt to it. And I'm sure Jennifer just like it's the same thing. Like she would have no idea how to do half of what I've had to figure out already. So it's like, you know, it's not like nobody can do it. It's just that nobody's going to be able to do every single aspect.
Of course, it's a huge lot of knowledge and talent and ability and dedication. You have to be dedicated to something a lot, and that takes a lot of work and a lot of sleep, lack of sleep rather.
Yes, I was going to say not a lot of sleep. That I've not been getting.
I think for between the two of us, we work 24 hours a day, I would say. Like, we each work, like, 12 to 15 hours a day. So, it's pretty crazy.
That's probably accurate.
Take care of yourselves, dear. Anyway, I wanted to mention the fact that it's rather nice to have some pixel art on the stream. We didn't have any yet. And I've always been kind of curious of pixel art because there are a lot of people who have an automatic kind of rejection of pixel art. There are two types of people who really automatically dislike pixel art. The ones who assume that it's immediately they think, oh, it's pseudo bullshit 16 bits gameplay.
I think you roboted out there for a second.
Yeah, he did. He may have roboted out hard.
He's auto-tuned the news now.
Oh dear. And he was making a point.
I hate when that happens. But yeah, like one of the things Jason and I met up on is like he was working on another game called Blasted Fortress, and we were just kind of trading pixel art stories and, you know, game stories gone wrong and talking about projects we were working on. And one of the big conversations we got on was what's called juicing, which is basically like making your animations look really nice for games and how that can affect it. And we just kind of went through each other's projects and see what we both wanted to work on, and it worked out quite nicely. I think one of the big discussions we had early on was actually that like it was so much harder for you to get people to talk to you, whereas I could just email someone and they're like, oh yeah, a women's. And I'm like, and I didn't, honestly, before I knew you, I didn't know how bad that effect was. Like, getting on Twitter was like a real eye-opener for me because I'd always been pretty much a hermit online. I mean, you and I were even on the same forum multiple times and didn't know each other because I just didn't really interact much with people.
RPG Maker.
Yeah, well, we were in the RPG Maker community, the milkshake community, and I don't know if you're part of the Strata community, but I was there too.
No, I don't think so.
Strata was like 3D Max's competitor for a while.
Oh, yeah, I never even heard of that, I guess.
Yeah, it failed quite early, but oh, I don't know where John went. The stream ate him. Oh, his PC crashed. Okay.
I am back. I
All right.
apologize. My PC is a piece of shit.
You really
I
auto-tuned out. It was amazing.
Oh, Jesus Christ. I was talking, and at some point I can't hear anything, and I'm thinking, okay, something fucking happened. It has. I have crashed, or the internet just died on me. Something happened, and I kept talking and expecting that I was talking to myself, basically. And then at some point I just see that I don't have an internet connection anymore, and then my PC just...
Well, that's what happens when somebody tries to appreciate pixel art. Something has to happen.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. I don't know if you got my entire point of the idea that people were automatically anti-pixel art because either they felt it was indie pretentious bullshit, or it was like black and white in a movie.
Yeah, it's. I mean, there's certainly ways where it really is that, because there are people who use it because they're lazy rather than because they're good at it, and that's when you get the pixel art that looks bad. But when it's done well, it's still, if you do an art style well, then it doesn't matter how old it is or anything like that, because it's always going to look good. Like, you can always appreciate certain NES games because they were just drawn really well at the time. And if they were really drawn that well, then it's going to translate over.
Of course.
So I think people who maybe take a shit on pixel art, they're not really thinking. They're either not really thinking it through, or they're going off maybe like a bad experience where they maybe played a game that had shitty pixel art. And they're like, well, this is apparently what everybody does, is they just make crappy pixel art and they throw it out there in 5 minutes. But there's a lot of technique to, learning how to make things look somewhat nice, and it's...
And then people say they don't realize that Seedscape is pixel art because that's not used. They've made the complete association between 8-bit and pixel art and not...
Right.
Yeah, I get your point as well. To me, it's the comparison is with cinema, and there's a lot of people who will indeed put black and white in their movies, and just it's black and white now. They filmed in color. They filmed entirely in color, and then put it in black and white in a post prod, and it doesn't look like black and white because black and white is very specific in cinema. It's really very precise work on different lighting and work on light sources, etc. It's very, very complicated.
Right.
We don't really have anyone today that really knows precisely how you're supposed to make black and white in cinema. It's a bit lost. We have kind of lost this notion. Again, we just film in color and then take the color away. And a lot of people indeed just put black and white either as a narrative purpose. It's black and white, so it's the past, it's the long gone past, or I put it in black and white, and therefore it's art. It's art because it's black and white. As simple as that.
It's like watching people post their Instagram photos in black and white.
Yeah,
I shouldn't talk my Twitter photos black and white, but.
Someone's mentioning Metal Slug. Paul Robertson, who does a lot of that stuff now, and he does the Adventure Time games.
Is someone mentioning Metal Slug because that's how awesome my pixel art is? Unlikely.
Paul Robertson is a big influence for both Jason and I, so we both love Paul Robertson.
Oh yeah, I get all my... Listen, I straight up steal his techniques. because I'm like, well, he's doing something right, so I better steal this because
He is like the master of juicing, though, where it's like everything's just so bouncy and squishy, and you just stare at it.
I see.
yeah,
And
it's
some of
just
it's
that,
really weird, but
it's kind of that, yeah, because the notion behind juicing is just that, like, you can make an animation that's, I mean, here's like the safest way to animate if I had to, like demonstrate what it would be. Here's what like, and this isn't wrong because like even Jennifer and I do this because it's just like it's effective. But what I mean is like, if you want to animate something, like let's say I want to animate this dude like throwing his arm up or something. The thing that you generally want to do is you want to kind of just grab everything and just like manipulate it without having to draw anything from scratch again.
I make everything in pieces too. And the thing is like you can just like, what you do is you kind of do a rough cut and just rotate and scale things, and then you re-edit it so it like looks proper. But too many people try to redraw like every frame, and it ends up, unless you've got a crap load of frames, you can't really do that. Vector art, you can kind of do that because you've got tweening, but
or they do like the opposite where they take. I'm actually trying to do it here, but it's not working very well. They take like this entire. They take like this entire arm. They'll flip it like 90 degrees. They'll go like that. And then I'll go redraw all the crap I just cut out, and then they'll kind of just fill in, and then they'll just say, well, there's my attack animation.
Of course.
And it's like, no, that's not your attack animation. That's terrible. You have to. I know it hurts, but you have to like redraw you especially have to redraw your keyframes, which is like, that's where it's like you have a pose, and you've got like this dude standing here, and you want to swing a sword or something. You have to imagine like what all the most exaggerated poses are going to be.
Yeah, when you move just your arm, your entire body moves as well. It's not just your arm.
Yeah, like you're gonna lean back, you're gonna pull that arm back. Something's gonna happen with this arm. And it looks crazy, but you're gonna.
Fantastic.
I know, it's really great.
It's good.
The thing is like, you have to make the animation in as few frames as possible, so put in all your keyframes and then start going on the in-between ones. That's a huge mistake people make, because then your motion has no guide. Like, there's no... Like, Jason and I have redone a couple things just because we're like, the arc is wrong, because I didn't I didn't do the endpoint first, because there was a certain way that animation was done, and it was just like, no, we have to go back and do it that way, just because. And a lot of people make the mistake of like editing the same thing over and over, whereas I like just redraw it 6 times and do what works best, or go with the one that looks the best.
Yeah, so like I think like last year I started redoing some of the art for my first game, and what I realized was if I just take that extra time and I really just like redraw the keyframe so that like each keyframe looks interesting in and of itself. So like even if you pulled that frame out of the animation, it still looks cool. Because if you do that, and you do that with all your keyframes, then you're gonna have like this really lively animation that just looks fun, and like there's all this body movement going on, and like I have this jab attack here, and there's just little things that happen during it, like the actual jab itself, and this is something that you can sort of do for like weapon attacks, and it actually works pretty well, is you can sort of animate so that there's only one frame between the stand and then the actual. Well, actually, you do need a wind-up frame too. That's kind of important. But then you just have that one frame where it's going forward, and then leave the rest up to like a trail or something that sort of shortens as it goes, because that'll also convey movement. So in the end, you get this kind of nice sort of fluid movement. But I also added some small touches, like the cape sort of like falls as he sort of shifts his body over to the right and things like that.
Oh, cool. Yeah,
It,
yeah, definitely.
it's really not. It's not that difficult if you know the techniques, but it's a matter of just like looking at everybody else's artwork and sort of stealing a few techniques here and there that look good.
Stealing the
There's
word.
quite a few books that are just basically collections of walk cycles and motion cycles. They're extremely useful. Like there's one I had to use regularly for birds because I don't draw birds very often, and recently I've had to draw a ton of them, so
Yeah, that's cool. Animation is always kind of magical to me. Like
yeah.
you have stuff that isn't moving, and your brain just tells you that it is, and you, oh my God, what's going on? Why is it working? Why does it work? Why does it function?
Just like magnets.
Oh,
Magnets, how do they work?
cool, May. Is it your hero or an enemy?
This is kind of a hero for a game that I don't really have planned out at all yet. I'm just sort of messing with like concepts. And this is probably the way I should start more games, is where I kind of think about the way everything looks first, just because I did that with Seedscape, and although like the design of the sprout is sort of half and half at this point between Jennifer and I did.
Yeah.
The sprout was not always what it looks like now, but I did come up with the initial design, and it's kind of weird to describe, but if you can imagine that the sprout is as it is now, except the entire body was more like the head, and then it had more of a human body underneath. So I did come up with that initial design for the head, at least, that kind of carried over and turned into the whole body. But, you know, it took we had to fiddle with it a lot. But for some reason, I seem to have a good knack for doing that, so I figure I might as well do that from now on, where I sort of just come up with maybe some good-looking character designs, which is why I have this whole timeline here, and it's kind of important for me to save and just look at, because it reminds me that, you know, something can start out kind of just, I don't know, just bland and not really appealing for whatever reason, and I can, you know, you can always mess with the shape, you can mess with the proportions, you can, you know, do something different with, in this case, I blacked out the face entirely and went with, like, colored eyes that match the tabards, and I don't know, there's just always something you can kind of finesse to make it work.
I love the goblin thingies.
Yeah,
They're my favorite.
Yeah, and I have a progression for those as well, where it's just, you know, I started out with, I sort of wanted to make them look maybe a little more crappy and 8-bit, but then I'm like, well, I might as well open up the palette, so I did, and then I sort of went with a bit more striking designs. And these are kind of final, but this one I just put like pants and chain gloves on and shit like that. So
yeah, we have to be appropriate.
Yes, of course, we don't want any goblin dicks flying around.
That's Dan's job.
I can't juice goblin dicks as well as as well as other people can.
Oh, I see you added the grill character.
Yeah.
The grill online.
Yeah. And I also at some point I did, because I changed the palette on them. I sort of liked. I kind of went with like this was more of a pure sort of colors thing, but I sort of prefer having the sort of like a dark Castlevania almost look to it, where the color's a little bit washed out to make room for colors that maybe should be. This is kind of, I know I'm doing sort of a Bob Ross thing by educating people on art right now, but I went with sort of like this is called energy conservation when you sort of do a palette like this, and what that really means, it's more of a 3D term, but it just means that like you're not blowing out all of your colors on things that aren't actually that sort of amazing to look at. So for instance, I took the yellow, which was just immensely powerful on this version, and then I toned it down because that way, if you ever want to, like let's say you want actual like effects to be on the screen, like fire. You can have fire on the screen, and then the fire actually
Yeah,
it stands out because it's not the same color as everything
it pulls
else.
your attention a bit more, yeah.
So that's just something I've been playing around with as well, because I just like messing around with that in my spare
Of
time
course.
when I have
I think
spare
it,
time.
I think it takes about like I think from what we learned is that I think it honestly takes a good year to develop a character to the point that other people are going to really latch onto it and want it. So like I think a lot of people make that mistake where they're like, oh, if I just make a good game, the main character won't matter, and I think that is total bullshit.
Yeah, this
Like,
is not your main character here.
yeah.
I
Oh,
mean,
that should be.
It's like, oh, my game's fun. And like that's true. Yes, your game's fun and people will play it, but like I guarantee you that Super Meat Boy, in his final published form, took them about a year. Like the little sprite and everything probably didn't take very long, but to develop him as something that other people would want and would want figures of and shirts and things like that, I guarantee it took them a year because it's just and
yeah, and that's the
it
weird
takes
thing is
such
you're
a long
actually
time.
most of character design is figuring out what to pair, like what to cut off. It's not even about like
Right.
because when you actually finish designing a character, you don't have something that's covered in all this shit you've added to it over time. You actually have something simple that you've cut away from over time. So like the
Sprout
Sprout's
has
a perfect.
literally lost like 2 feet in height.
Yeah, I mean he's lost a body and stuck his arms and legs basically on like this head body combination. It's like what you can simplify because ultimately that's what people kind of respond to, which is why
Of course.
companies when they make logos they want them to be sort of simple and just readable.
Yeah, that reminds me of a picture I saw a few years ago. It was basically just a series of lines, of colored lines, and you could guess what character those what characters those lines. Again, those were just lines
Right.
on colored lines, and you knew who the character was just with those lines, and it was quite impressive. You immediately knew, yeah, that's this one and that one, that's her and that's him, etc. In a second, right away.
Yeah, the Valve had done a lot of they did some developer commentary on things like Team Fortress 2 where they really talked about it over and over and over again. They said silhouetting. You have to get the silhouetting right
Yeah.
because you have to be able to just identify a character by its silhouette. That's how you can really. That's how the character itself kind of pops, and that's why the characters in Team Fortress 2 look so. They're so disproportionate from each other because they just have their own unique silhouette. But that also that's why they're so iconic, and that's why you can recognize them so easily.
Mm-hmm.
When you see the heavy weapons guy, he looks nothing like a sniper. Even from like a distance, you can tell immediately what you're looking at.
Yeah, I remember the old designs they had for the characters. They were pretty much just soldier and soldier and soldier. Soldier 1 and Soldier 2 and Soldier 3.
Yeah, pretty much.
I think the silhouette thing really hit me when we were like playing around with cookie cutters, because like we were trying to like come up with a cookie cutter of Sprout, and it was just kind of like I just popped the drawing into the thing, and it was just like instantly it was just like such a clean. It's such a clean outline to see that it would perfectly work well for something like that, and I think that's when you kind of know you've got it. Is you're like, hey, I can take this outline and basically apply it to anything, and it's recognizable and attractive and things like that.
Yeah,
I get what you mean.
it's all about appeal, as they say.
Definitely. Well, that's all extremely interesting, and we can all say that we are absolute experts in art and creation, and we know everything about everything. That's always pleasant as an idea.
Yes.
Well, thanks a lot for the explanation for animation, for example. It's always quite an interesting and amazing notion to me, animation. Like, this works and this shouldn't be working, and this doesn't make any sense, but it does. I really love it. I'll guess I'll get into the topic of free speech. because that's the point of the stream. Today I'd like to talk a little bit about YouTube. I'm not really a big fan of Google. I'm not really fan of a big fan of how Google deals with YouTube itself in the first place. Apparently, I'm not the only one. The thing is that YouTube has a big issue of basically saying as soon as someone claims DMCA on your video, we're going to think that they were right.
Is that the thing is though is like is that I'm not sure if that's how the law works. Like you have to shoot first and ask questions later. I'm not sure. Like that might be the case. But John has exploded again.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, it was about time because he was making a point. So.
Yeah. Every time he makes a good point, it just the stream just eats him.
Yes.
What is that people always say gets eaten by a grue?
I guess.
So, like, what style of gameplay? I mean, I assume I already know, but you can explain it for other people while he's gone.
Oh, all this stuff I'm working on?
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to make. I mean, I don't even know that it's going to see the light of day. I just thought maybe I would make a bunch of stuff just to like test concept of maybe like just a platformer or something that I could reasonably work on myself, because platformers, as you know, the graphical workload is automatically cut into like thirds,
Right.
because you don't have to do different directions. You just mirror everything you've already drawn. But I don't know, it's just sort of a fun idea. I thought, I mean, I don't know, I just came up with this sort of theory for like a game where there's like this big like goblin castle that you have to go through, and it's very Castlevania-like in that it's just so huge and it's like a big maze, and they're gonna do something horrifying like split the earth in half or something if you can't like get to the inner sanctum. And so just something kind of simple, like something like you might play on the SNES or whatever. Thought it might be fun.
Yeah.
But I don't know, just trying to feel out like character designs and things. It's like I didn't even really think of a story. I just started making characters.
I think when you make a character, the story adapts to the character because that character is sort of a culmination of everything that's happened to them. So I don't see any reason why you can't really work backwards. I mean, that's what I usually do, because I find if you get too overloaded with like the history and lore of a character, it actually becomes more cumbersome to create them instead of it being the other way around.
Yeah, because like even when I'm creating.
Oh, Jesus Christ. It crashed again.
Every time you make a point, John, you gotta stop making good points because Google's not happy.
I'm so sorry about that. I apologize so deeply for my shitty computer. I mean, I haven't used it for an entire week of vacation, and it dies on me just like that. Well, and really just at the time where it shouldn't be dying, by the way, obviously.
It's like when the cat poops in your shoes when you've gone away for too long.
Don't fucking do that. Oh, Jesus Christ. Anyway, I'll go back to the topic. I was talking about YouTube.
Yes.
About Google being shit, and then I went to what happened this week. It's a YouTuber, he production, but he H3H3. He made a video about another YouTuber, a silly, jokey video about another YouTuber. The thing is, this other YouTuber is under full screen, which are basically they own YouTubers, which is kind of it means much more than it should. and they owned the YouTuber that he was making fun of, and they claimed that they took his video off from YouTube. They said you don't have the right to put this to put this on YouTube, and then they even how do you say, they put a strike on his channel, saying that he violated the rules of YouTube, like he had done something terrible, because again he talked about one of their YouTubers, which apparently was terrible, like an absolute crime. Um, and that's something that a lot of other YouTubers found distasteful. It kind of is. It's also rather ironic because the slogan for Full Screen is "Power to the creators,"
Yeah.
and they take away your power to create anything if you don't create what they want you to create, basically. And that's something that is quite telling. YouTube is one of the most important creative platforms nowadays, where tons of people put every bit of creation they made, of creativity they have on a personal channel, etc. And so some of those people get filthy rich thanks to YouTube. You have people like PewDiePie, Markiplier, etc. that get intensely rich. In France, we have people like Norman. He's just a guy that talks, and he's sort of funny, I suppose. He's not bad. He just makes jokes and talks about his life and how silly daily life is, etc. And he's got millions and millions of views and viewers and subscribers. And recently, he even has had his own on-stage show for that. Like him, you can't find a single ticket for his show because everyone went to see him, to watch him. And the guy just made silly videos on YouTube, and so that's something that is huge, really, that became huge, and yet YouTube and Google still consider that no, if you fuck up, or even if someone says that you fucked up, well, fuck you. We'll take the video off. We won't take any risk. We won't allow anything like that to happen, and yeah, that's really kind of paradoxical to have such a huge outlet for creativity and making and creating and producing and all this, and it's so easy to just abuse it and turn it into no, you can't do anything. You can't do anything with it.
Someone was asking if the animation principles between games and featured TV animation are the same. Not really, but we can talk about that later. But the DMCA thing, one thing I want to find out is if they're obligated to take it down immediately and ask questions later, or if that's a thing. And someone's saying that like 8chan just ignores.
I don't think they're obligated to immediately take it off and then inquire and make sure that it was right and all that. I think they do this because that way they won't have to deal with anything else. Hey,
That's
someone DMCA'd, maybe they might sue or bitch a lot about it and all that. We'll just get rid of the video and we're done, and then we'll do some work if the guy who got his video DMCA'd does complain. If they don't complain, then we're done with it. And complaining about it is quite difficult. It takes a lot of effort and back and forth, and it's quite amusing because I put a silly video a few years ago when Animal Crossing came out. I made a joke, well, joke, that's a big word, review, a Kotaku review of Animal Crossing New Leaf, and I simply put a part of Boku no Pico to whatever, you know, that gay Shota show, a scene where they're fucking, and I just put a few things to hide their genitals and all that. It was just a little joke thing. And the very next day, I had hidden all the genitals, everything. Really, it was very appropriate, of course. And the very next day, my account was terminated. The next day, and so I felt maybe I could just explain it was a joke. I can't even take the video off. It was just to have some silly fun on this kind of stuff. So I don't really mind. And in French, it's very funny because they say if you wanna contact us because you think it was unfair or you wanna resolve it, etc., click this link, and there is no link. I couldn't even just contact them and try to resolve anything. There was no way to do that. None.
Got a problem? Here's a trash can where you can put it.
Put it in the complaint box because I don't check them.
That's just really strange. Like YouTube doesn't make sense in a lot of ways.
Some stuff is like the FCC is a pain in the butt about certain things, and I can understand that. And it is just easier to lay down than to fight, because really, I mean, companies really, and this is going to sound really weird because people are always like, oh my god, companies control everything, and you know, but until like a horde of consumers complain about something, companies just pretty much have to go with the flow on whoever's the loudest, you know, thing. Is this going to be Grandpa Goblin? He looks like he has a sore back.
I know.
That would be really funny.
But you're entirely right. As long as they don't run any risk of losing consumers or money or anything like that, YouTube and Google won't give a slightest shit about those complaints. People are complaining, the fuck, get out. We won't take any monetary, any judiciary, any legal risk, and yeah, we're going with it. And when you have things like the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, like SOPA, etc., that you have one or two of them every single year, and of course they're doing that. Of course they're doing this kind of bullshit, because what do you expect? They own you. They own everything. So they want that to happen because that gives them more power, more money, more control over what gets made and how things get made. So yeah, they'll do it. Of course they'll do it.
I think it's more like the bigger you get, the more you have to lose and the more quiet you have to get. Like, I've even learned that in my experiences, just like where I could like say something before, I get like 100 well actuallys a day now, and I'm just like, please don't. Well, actually, on some remote island in the South Pacific, there's this one type of bug that doesn't do that. Therefore, what you said is disproven completely. And I'm just like, why do I even bother? And it gets really overwhelming. And sometimes it's just like, okay, whatever. I'm just not going to do that thing anymore. I don't want to deal with it. It's costing me too much time and money to stress out over that. So I can kind of see both sides of it, where it's just like I don't want the government looking into my company, so I'm just going to adhere to these DMCA's whether they're false or not is these people's problem and not mine. So like I get it. It's not great, but I get it.
I get your point. The thing is, you're just one little indie developer. YouTube is Google. Google has more power than Obama. Google has more power than every single person on Earth. They own the planet. I'm not really worried about how they're going to get overwhelmed by people being mean to them on the internet. I don't really think they have that much to fear, to be honest. I get your side of the story, but no, Google, I don't think they have this kind of a
well, they're still people, though, and if their employees are complaining enough about having to deal with that sort of thing, and they're dealing with, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of support staff a day to deal with that, like you do have to sort of understand that.
If they complain, well, they'll hire Chinese workers, and Chinese workers won't complain. Definitely won't. So they don't complain.
They're pretty good about hiring mostly U.S. and Canadian citizens, so.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really know. I'm a bit cynical about corporations and all of that. You know, I'm a dirty socialist French. But
Well, socialism is the biggest corporation of all, so it's the worst
Jesus.
one. It doesn't even care about making prosperity for anyone. It's just like, yep, let's all roll in the same mud pit now, and that's
Oh,
fair.
don't say that. Don't say that. It's not Trotskyism. We're not trying to be Stalin or anything like that. I guess our historical appropriation of socialism in France is a bit different. I'm not even saying I'm a socialist myself, but clearly in France we don't define socialism the same way as the rest of the planet.
No, because the problem is other countries see socialism as an opposite to capitalism, and that's not necessarily the case.
Yeah, definitely
Usually you need capitalism to pay for socialism, so that one can't exist without the other.
Listen, in America, we consider socialism to be anything that's not American.
Yeah.
So there's that.
Hey, I ate McDonald's right before the stream, you know, so I'm as American as they come.
So you're giving those horrible corporations your money.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't have any Apple product in my home though.
I don't either.
That's a good start.
Yeah. That's actually a good segue. How do you pronounce this word? English is just so fucking weird. Segue.
Segway.
Segway. Okay. So Segway, like this weird machine that.
Yeah, exactly like that.
Americans used to all have, so that they could walk without actually having to walk. Like, I still don't fucking grasp how the thing ever existed.
I never even saw one in real life, so.
Campus police use them.
That looks really cool.
Why? Anyway, that's not the point. We were talking about Apple. That's an article I read in Le Canard Enchaîné. It's basically the only French newspaper that is clearly independent, and they talked about Apple. It's about the French press, but it's obvious that they do that in many more countries than just France. And basically, Apple wants to become a news content aggregator, and to make iNews Apple News. That's right. They want to start Apple News, and they will select various news sources, various articles, and as usual, select the ones that fit best your personality, your work, your tastes, etc. So do all the work for yourself, so that you don't have to think for yourself, which is already obviously happening in Facebook and Twitter and all other social media. That's kind of the point. So you don't have to. They know you better than yourself, which is a bit scary sometimes. Anyway, they want to start this thing, and the thing is with French press, and I'm saying French press, but obviously the entire world's press, they have something quite amusing, where if you have an Apple advertisement in your magazine, and they're paying quite a hefty sum so that you advertise there, you have to censor your own magazine cover, so that Apple is a special announcer that that forces us to sign a specific chart to showcase its advertisement. Anything that is too traumatizing, too dramatic on a cover needs to be avoided, so that we don't perturb the Apple product. No cigarettes, no sex, no violence, no terrorism, no war. they are forbidden topics. So that means that any magazine that has an Apple advertisement inside needs to control what it shows, what it talks about, and how it talks about it. The Apple product is more important than the information itself.
Hasn't that always been the case, though?
Ah, Jesus Christ, that's just fucking terrible. That's just fucking awful. Apple owns the news. They don't want you to know about a specific thing, and you will never hear about it in your entire life.
Yeah, it's just weird. I still don't understand how Apple went from like being this thing that like only hippies used, and then all of a sudden, like, but that was like, it was never the case that they were like this hippie organization. It's like they were always this huge corporation, so I don't really know.
The thing is, they knew exactly how to market themselves. They marketed themselves as, look, if you buy our products, you'll be different. Obviously, you won't be different because you will be buying exactly the same product as anyone else, but if you buy our products, you totally will be your own individual. You will be your own self, and you will be able to claim that you are an individual, that who you are is you, and not just some other ship that is buying everything that everyone else is buying. So yeah, be yourself, be your own individual, and buy Apple like every single other person on Earth.
Oh, the Genius ones were the best, and I was like, oh my god. Did you see those?
I'm
you're a genius.
I'm a Microsoft, and I'm a PC, and I'm a Mac. That's the one.
Not just that. That was really ignorant. I really did not like those commercials at all.
It's just so dumb.
Yeah.
I don't know who those commercials swayed. Like who's swayed by the fact that
smug people.
But like if you've never used Windows before, like you should still. How would you still not know that Windows doesn't just like the commercial made it look like all you do in Windows is like make spreadsheets. And it's like, oh yeah, and we also play every PC game ever made.
Right. That's what I was gonna say. Is like they're like, oh my god, the PC is so boring. That's why most games are on the PC and not Mac.
That's why Mac has 2% of the share of Steam. Like only 2% of Steam users play on a Mac, and only like I think 0.8% play on a Linux. And I mean, yeah, it's so boring. Look at all these 98% of gamers playing on a Windows platform.
But that's the point. You use the word smug for those Apple people, for those apples.
Apple people.
The thing is, they're not smug. They're people who have highly low self-esteem, because they're people who allow a specific product, a specific marketing team to determine what their identity is. I want my identity to be this thing, and if I buy this product, then I can pretend that my identity is this, because if you own this product, your identity is now that. That is as simple as this. It's like people who buy SUVs because they have tiny dicks, and they can now pretend that they are total hunks, you know, because I own a fucking SUV. Yeah, you just own an SUV in a place where you could really just walk, but now you use an SUV. That's awesome, I guess. That's the point. It's cosmetics.
Excuse me, it is called the Seedmobile, and it is beautiful. No, I'm just kidding. I can't even drive, so. But like I don't know, there are cases where like if you have to go to a lot of trade shows and stuff like that, they're useful. But I see like people who obviously don't need them with them, and I'm just like, oh. And people who can't pay their bills that own Hummers and more screens than I could ever have need for.
I've seen people who buy a phone that is 600 fucking euros and then they tell me, oh, you know, I have a hard time getting by.
Oh God, yeah.
It's so hard to pay my student loans when I have my iPhone 5 and.
why the fuck are you doing that?
It's like, I
And
know.
again, there are people who have a need, and I do say a need, like they can't afford to not do that, to work with cosmetics. Here I need to look like someone that is like this, like that, because if I don't look like this, then people will think that I'm not. It's more important that people think I am something than to be something. And that's where Apple was a genius. Apple was a genius company with their marketing teams. They knew very well how to speak to people's ego instead of their actual being of who they were.
Well, that's sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy also, because
Exactly.
if you just get a few people to believe that, then suddenly they're going to perpetuate that sort of thinking for you, because now they think that nobody else means anything unless they have certain status symbols. It's like all
Yeah,
you have to do is
exactly.
plant that seed, and then everyone else will spread it for you.
Maybe if
But
you
I
want to
think
be a con artist, like that's the thing is
That's my
that's like
dream.
the whole like gold bricking and stuff like that. It's like, oh, look at that dance, that's amazing.
Well, it's a punch,
He's
but
I know, but he looks like he's like really working it.
oh, he's
But
working it all right.
but like that's the thing is like people, there's this whole dress for the job you want kind of thing, but at the same time, like if you have no skills to back that up, like that's only if you have the skills to back up that dress. It does not, like, this is not the Wolf on Wall Street thing. You're not just going to end up in some job that's paying you like 30 grand a month because you bought an expensive necklace. Like, I'm always amazed. Like, I will watch even other developers and they're like posting this new thing they bought every week, and then they're like, oh, I can't pay for my light bill. Go fund me. And like, go fund yourself, bro. Like, like there are people who genuinely need help, and a lot of them say nothing. And I feel really bad because there's like a few people I know who are genuinely struggling that would never ask for help. But then you have people that are like, yeah, I bought 3 new Nintendo DSs last week, and now I can't afford food. And I'm like, well, am I supposed to feel bad right now? Like, I was on, like, I still have a TV from like the 80s, and I have a newer one, but I bought it like on sale, and it was super cheap too, and like I never pay a lot for anything, because I just like I don't understand. Like I run a business, and I got an older smartphone, like a couple generations behind, and I got it for free because my phone company was so upset that I was not upgrading my phone that they're like, please just take this one. You don't even have to pay for it. And I'm like, okay, but it just people don't have enough self-worth in their lives that they feel that if they just act the part that things will happen, because there's too much of this like luck. People think everything's luck and you just have to be in the right place in the right time in the right suit. But again, like if you do not have any skills to back that up, it's not going to happen. And even if you do have the skills to back it up, it's
but
hard. Everybody else is trying to do the same thing you are, and
But
you
what do you
know,
do? What do you do if the system approves what you're doing? If what do you do if indeed the mere fact that you bought a hefty necklace and a pretty dress gets you the job, even though you don't have the skills, but even the guy that is supposed to hire you and make sure you have the skills will give more credence to the ones that do dress for the jobs than the ones that it studied for the job.
Well, that's the
Both
problem is
work like that.
you have employers who think that way. So
right.
then you get into the problem of now you've got people who are being hired because they met the checklist, but they can't really do the job necessarily. They just met all the weird criteria, like, oh, you gotta make sure your breath smells good and your hair is all straight, and it's like, yeah, but it shouldn't really matter. All that really should matter is like if you can do the job really well.
Hmm?
But it's
I
like a
think
lot of weird
that's
social
kind
things.
kind of why we're seeing like the resurgence of like micro firms where it's just like a couple people, because like with the internet and technology now, like there's so much stuff you can just do at home, and people are
Yeah,
just like,
exactly.
you know what, I'm too smart to spend 3 hours a day on my face and hair, and I'm just gonna work where nobody will ever see me and just make money. And
Yeah,
I get that, but I just mean that like I think that there are people that don't realize that's a possibility, and they're just like, everybody's trying to dress for the job. So what happens is then the genetic lottery comes into place, right? Like, if everybody's dressing for the job and nobody has any skills, who are they going to pick, right? They're going to pick the person they find the most visually appealing.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
I don't play that
That's
game
been
because I walk with a limp.
proven
So
that more beautiful people have a better chance at getting better jobs. More beautiful people get better jobs. They get paid more. That's a fact. And well, at the very least, that's an American study. So maybe it's a fact only in America, but I doubt it's only a fact in America. Yeah, you will tend to pick people who are pleasing to your eyes. Like, oh, that I liked that person, and so I'm going to pick that person.
I mean, I don't know if that's the case in America, because there have been a lot of places that haven't hired me, and I'm absolutely beautiful, so I really don't know. I don't think it's working right.
I'm sure that's the case, dear. I'm sure you're the hottest man around.
I don't know. Like, I don't know. There were places that I applied to, and they're basically like, you know, you're too like, you'd be surprised at how much running your own business, like, it can hurt you for getting jobs after you get to a certain point. It's kind of your only option because people are look at your resume and they're like, what the fuck are you doing here? They're like, go back to your business. You do not need to be here. And I'm like, okay, but I just want a part-time job while I'm working on something. They're like, you don't need to be here. And I'm like, damn it.
Yeah, being overskilled or something like that.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, like, sometimes I just like to take, like, short-term contract work, but it's gotten harder and harder the more that I do this stuff, and it's just kind of like now it's become to the point where, like, health-wise and skill-wise, like, I don't really have a choice. I'm going to be doing this forever, or I can work a really low-skill job and lie about my resume. Like, those are my choices. No, I that wasn't me on TV. I didn't work on that big game. It's just, yeah, you do get to a point, and that's why people don't understand, like, when people get to a certain point, they start charging a lot. Like, I had this conversation with someone, and they were like, don't you think this person charges too much? I'm like, well, that's what they value their work at. So if you don't want to pay that, that's fine, but that's what their time is worth to them, and obviously someone's paying it, or they wouldn't be charging that. And it's just, like, you do get to that point because, like, anything that my name goes on now reflects on the other things that I do, so it becomes, like, narrower and narrower and narrower, like, where I can work, because it's just, I've been here so long without a certain degree of steadiness to my income and things like that, that it's just, like, it just becomes very difficult.
Yeah, I get what you mean.
And it's just, like, also, I mean, my opinions and stuff like that, like, I'm like conservative-ish libertarian type, and like people always are like, oh my god, if you're a woman at work you get harassed. Like, try being more conservative during the Obama election, and like the way that people would just like treat you at work and stuff, like, it was horrible. I had somebody call me, and like I didn't even care. Like, I'm not really like pro-Republicans or anything, but like in Canada I'm considered more conservative. My old boss called me at my new job to brag to me that Obama won, and I'm just like, why did you even do this?
That's amazing. Like, holy shit.
That's how insane people get, and I'm just like, you know what, like, I told you, like, I made a mistake ever admitting that I was slightly conservative at work, because, like, it was just non-stop, like, Obama's still in president, you know, Obama phones. And I'm just like, oh my god, like, go away. And it's just
mind-blowing. This thing is it's mind-blowing because your boss is a fucking douchebag, but also because you know what baffles me is when an American person comes to me and calls me conservative, a Republican, according to their own American political views. I'm French guy and a socialist president. How the fuck? Even the most far-right people in this country aren't as right wing as a Republican in America.
Oh
And
yeah,
these people are telling me I'm a fucking, and
people
that's just,
don't understand though that like a Tory has like 3 different types, and a Tory is not a Republican. And a Republican is a fundamentalist conservative in some places and not in others, and in other places a Republican is just someone who believes in a republic. So like there's so many, and like I just love when like Americans try to tell me what I believe, and I'm just like, they're like, you're not conservative, you're a liberal. I'm like, no, in my country I am a blue Tory. That's what I am. If you go
that's
look it up, it describes my views perfectly. I am a progressive conservative, and it's just like in America, no, I'm a liberal. I'm more liberal,
that's
but
very
not in Canada. Just deal with it, because Canada is so liberal that everyone is conservative,
yeah, exactly.
and it's just like, but that will get you harassed at work more than anything else, and like that also makes it hard. Like back to my point, to get a job if people find out, at a very liberal business, like one business was a graphics design business, if they find out that you even slightly don't agree with certain things, like you better leave quick, because like people will bother you a lot.
That's close to what I mentioned, the idea that I need to look the part more than being something. And even there, that's kind of the same thing. Basically, you have to follow a certain set of appearances, and opinions are just appearances. They're not. They're the same thing. And so, if you don't agree with me, then you're telling me that I'm wrong. You're telling me that I'm not what I'm claiming to be. And so you are this specific thing. Because if you are whatever, a conservative, a neoconservative, then that means that I'm not a neoconservative. And that means that I'm such a better person. That's like people who claim, well, you're misogynist just because you're misogynist or you're racist or whatever. Again, when I had an American New Yorker girl say that France had a colonialist culture. Holy fucking shit! She lives in America and she's telling me that. Anyway, that just really baffled when she did.
I
And the
call
thing
it
is,
shut up language. Like that's what they're doing. They're just trying to shut you up. They're just, you're a racist, shut up.
that's not what I think. I think they're telling me I'm racist or I'm colonialist or I'm conservative or whatever, because that way they aren't. If that person in front of me that I don't like, that disagrees with me, is something that I hate or something that I don't want to be myself, therefore I'm not that. Simple as this. I have proven that I'm not a conservative or racist or misogynist or colonialist or whatever else. I have proven that because that is a racist, therefore I am not. And that's the very purpose. And that's why Apple marketing and advertisement in general works so well. Look, you are that. This is totally not you. This is totally not you. This is totally what you could be. So be that.
There's a
Oh,
lot
that's
of begging the question, though, too, where they're like, oh, like, even saw some people who are like, yeah, I'm so right-wing, like, haha, right-wing, like, such a right-wing hate group, haha, and I'm like, implying there's something wrong with being more right-wing, like, don't do that. That's just crappy, because, like, I never assume any one group has the answers, because a long time ago, liberals were closer to the center, and, conservatives were far to the right, so I was a liberal then, too. So it's just like, they have to understand that the political climate changes so much that you can't just be like, liberals are always right, except for these liberals, and conservatives are always wrong, especially these conservatives. Like, you can't do that, because you run the risk of becoming, a patsy for that party. Like, if the party that I vote for screws up, I will vote against them, and I think that's something more people need to do. Even if you don't necessarily like the other party, you can be like, I'm tired of this crap. If you want my vote back, you're going to have to stop doing that. You're going to have to stop race baiting. You're going to have to stop gender baiting. Just stop. Like, I don't even, like, I think that was the Republican debate the other night was like really ridiculous, and like you shouldn't be making jokes like that. But at the same time, it shows how sick to death people are of just like, oh, who is a racist today? Who is a sexist today?
Yeah.
Let's get mad at some out of context comment.
Yeah,
And it's just people are just tired of it.
Definitely. There's a lot of fatigue of the idea that they're all the same, basically. They're all
Right.
saying exactly the same stuff. They're all doing exactly the same stuff. Had McCain been elected, wouldn't he have done exactly what Obama did, etc.? It's that kind of political fatigue. And what's the point? If I vote for those people, they screw me up. If I vote for those people, they screw me up. If I vote for this guy, he says he'll do that, and obviously he won't, etc., etc. And so that, again, that brings me back to my point. Since I can't trust those people, since I can't trust actions, since no action will be taken anyway, I have to trust cosmetics. I have to trust appearances. She's a woman, so that will work better. He's black, so that will work better. He's white, so it's going to be better. He was born in this part of the USA, so that will work better, etc., etc., which is completely irrelevant, which is completely worthless, obviously, for the quality of a politician or for the quality of anything, to be honest. But what else can I trust? I already can't trust actions. I already can't trust reality. So I'm just going to trust what looks good, what I can brag about. I voted for a black guy, I voted for a woman, I voted for a true American, I voted for whatever. I voted for what makes me feel good about myself, because how can I feel good about the rest?
As a general rule, don't vote for anybody who says, I'm a true American.
Don't vote for anybody who's offering you just free crap that does not help you be self-sustaining either, because that's just ridiculous. Like, I don't know who the person was, but they're just like, yeah, everyone's gonna get free money, and I'm like, do you guys still really fall for this? Like, do you really believe that there's free money and that like somebody is not paying for that? Like what?
Yeah,
Free
money just
phones,
falls from
free
the
money,
heavens,
free food. Nobody has to pay anything. Wait a minute, where are all these companies going? Oh, they're just greedy, so it's okay. And, oh, why are we broke? Oh, we drove everybody away. Oh, well, just tax them harder. Just tax the ones that are left harder, and that will fix it. Oh, why are those companies leaving? Oh, shit, oh, shit, oh, shit. And it's just like, at what point do you realize that the harder you tax someone, the more power they have to either control you or leave? Like, it just gets ridiculous.
That's another issue entirely. I disagree with you personally, but I'm a bit left-wing myself, so that's why. But
well, it's a bit different when you like run a business and you understand like all of the complexities of that kind of stuff, because like it's not simple and people think it's simple.
No, it's never simple. It's never simple. That's as simple as that. It's never simple. And that's the issue. That's a problem.
So if I see stuff, people are like, "You're against social programs." I'm like, "No, I'm not. I like plans to pay for those things, and I think your plan sucks." So that's pretty much my take on it.
Yeah, I get you. I don't really agree. Again, I'm a dirty commie, but I definitely get your point, of course. Again, to me, it's when I see the White House and all that, I look at completely powerless people. To me, Obama doesn't have any actual power. Of course, he's got power. Of course, he's got much more power than I do. But I think that Walt Disney has much more power than he does. I think that Apple has infinitely more power than he does, and that he ever will. I think that Goldman Sachs has much more power than he ever have in his entire life. He could be a dictator and have less power than Goldman Sachs have today, and that's also what frustrates me a little bit, because people confuse the source of power, confuse who does own them. It's not Obama that owns Americans, it's Walt Disney. Walt Disney knows how to determine, okay, today, Americans are going to be interested in that, and we'll make sure that not just Americans but the entire world, of course. But that's what we're going to aim for, and that even more relevant than that. For example, China. Holy shit! How did we go so far off from the topic at hand? Anyway,
So here's the thing with Americans, though. They have this weird idea that taxing people is a punishment, and that's how you take power away from them. And I'm like, you are never, ever, ever taking power away from someone by taxing them. You're actually giving it to them.
That's one thing where I'm apparently anti-American, because I actually agree with taxation, just in the sense that, like, if you're going to have a government that even works, then you might as well tax people, because you have to pay for shit that, like, if you're not gonna, because if you don't want to pay for anything, then you don't want a government. You just want, like, an anarchy. So you can have that, but, like,
exactly.
Like,
and the thing is, I'm not against taxes. I'm perfectly fine paying a percentage of taxes, and I have no problem with that. I have a real problem with people who think that, like, they're actually paying for what they cost the government, and that other people are not paying, even though they make way more. And it's just like, no. If you're not paying like 30 grand a year personally yourself in taxes, you're actually not paying what you cost the government, and that's fine. But when people get on about this stuff where they're like, oh, let's tax them businesses harder because we shouldn't have to pay, and it's like, it doesn't, even if you want to believe that's how it works, it just doesn't. And all it does, like where I used to live, it's really sad because I actually went back and visited it, and they jacked their tax rate specifically to get at Walmart, right? Because they wanted more of the money that Walmart was bringing in, which I can understand that, because Walmart has a tendency to kill like some of the businesses around it. But what inadvertently happened was they jacked it so high that all those small businesses closed anyway, and Walmart didn't pay anything because they don't exist in that province. So they weren't paying taxes there anyway, so they literally just caused all the businesses around them to close, and everybody who didn't close switched to cash and is now doing illegal things to get by.
Yeah, of course.
And it's so sad, because I think that there's a way to compromise and have like everyone paying for their own 2 feet on the pavement, you know, in part. And yes, you know, people who make more are always going to pay more if it's a percent. You don't need to be like, as soon as you do well, you owe me half your income. It's like, but I only do well like once in a blue moon. Oh, that doesn't matter. And I'm just like, but it does matter.
The issue is when imagine if someone is against taxes, if they get $500 a month at the end of each month, if they do cheat taxes, they will cheat taxes by $20, $50, and really, honestly, who gives a shit about $50? And I'm not saying that they're not doing something criminal when they do, but honestly, that's completely irrelevant. And to them, $50 is huge, though. But the thing is, if a huge company like Apple or Amazon, for example, France is a terrible, terrible place for huge companies because they pay a fuckload of taxes, a huge load of taxes, even if they're not set in France, by the way. If their work has people buying in France, then it pays taxes as well. Really, it's a very shitty system for non-French companies regarding taxes. To the point where you have companies like Amazon, for example, they cheated the system, and they owe France like dozens of billions of dollars in taxes that they didn't pay, and that shit has a lot of influence. That shit means that some people the government won't be able to pay for specific things because of them, because of the fact that they cheated taxes, even though they fucking can afford those taxes. And so that's also kind of my issue with taxes, is that I perfectly understand people who complain about taxes when they don't have enough money to pay for those. If they have enough money to pay for taxes, I'll tell them to shut the fuck up. Just pay your taxes, dude. Even overpay them. Just overpay your taxes, okay? Just give more than what you owe, because you can afford it, and you'll have your swimming pool in the end anyway. So just do it. Just do it.
Well, we have a problem in America where people argue stupidly, and they'll say like they'll make everything into like an all or nothing argument. So it's like if you try to like argue for why taxes are necessary if you want a government to function, and they'll be just like, well, I don't think I should have to pay any taxes. It's like, okay, that's fine, but then you have to also realize that like if your wife gets murdered, you can't call the police because now there is no police, so you're gonna have to investigate that yourself. And even if they're like, well, fine, I'll deal with that, it's like, well, you're gonna come up to something you can't deal with, and then you're gonna wish someone was there to help you. And that's ultimately like what I think the government's there for, is just like when you're completely fucked and you have no other options and it's like it's going to ruin your life. Like I think that's what the real function of the government is to like swoop in when you're just completely screwed over and to sort of help you out of that rut so you can get back on your feet and live again. But they don't even want that. Well, not some people don't even want like that bottom safety net where it's like they would rather die and have everybody else die than.
So they want to be children, basically. They want parents to pay for their stuff and take care of them regardless without having to pay anything. They want to be treated like children.
Or they want to just like have it be completely like an anarchy where it's like nobody's taken care of, but then they don't realize that like there are things where you're gonna, like, no matter what you think about, like, even if you're a person who thinks you shouldn't have to pay any taxes, at some point you're gonna go, oh, I wish someone would help me through this, because like, what if you get
free inhabitants?
Like, what if you get horribly sick, or like I said, something illegal happens to you, and let's say somebody beats you up, and they're 300 pounds of pure muscle, and you're like some scrawny little guy, and you have no. So you see this guy coming around again. What are you gonna do with no police? He's gonna beat you up again. Like that's what you sort of need.
Anarchy is a pretty finite state because like as soon as one group decides they're gonna get together and go after the other group, that's
right.
it.
It's not an anarchy anymore. Now it's like it's almost like even an anarchy is not going to end like with every man for himself. People are going to form tribes, and it's just going to be like needlessly primitive.
Right.
That's awesome. I totally want to see that. I want to.
And I already have problems as it is with tribalism and tribal behavior. Like not that I have anything against like people who watch sports and stuff. I don't really like sports, but like I don't like the sports mentality when people apply it to other things. Like, I'm from here, therefore I have to root for this. Or like,
I'm just amazed at how people think that, like, if you run a business, you automatically are, like, dodging your taxes. I'm like, that it's not that easy, guys.
It's always more complicated. There's always so much more... and
I'm always amazed that those same people will turn around and try to ask me to help them cheat. And I'm just like, what is wrong with you? It's always the people who complain about, businesses evading taxes that, like, I will be out at lunch with them. And they're like, oh, yeah, you can pay for this and put it down as a business expense, right? And I'm like, that's illegal. And they're like, oh, businesses do it all the time. I'm like, and you're asking me to do this as someone who complains about that. And I'm like, I'm never talking to you again. I think it's crazy how, like...
Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
How people think things work and how they actually work is just, like, so separate from each other, and it's sad. I kind of wish that more people would, like, try to run a business just to understand how much rent that takes up in your head and how much consideration you have to have for things and, stuff like that.
We moved away a lot from the free speech... from the free speech topic. It's very interesting. I'm not at all complaining, by the way. It's just I'll try to bring it back to the topic at hand. The idea that Apple managed to control the way press expresses itself, chooses its topics, chooses the news.
It's kind of related, though.
Kind of, yeah.
Because when you're relying on a giant company to pay all your bills, inevitably they will control your government. You can't do anything about that. The only way to avoid that is for things to be more spread out and not to rely on one giant company to pay all your bills, because it's like marrying a rich husband. Like, okay, great, you have all this money, and then he starts sleeping with 20 other women and having babies with them, And like you can leave and go back to the lifestyle you have, or you can sit and put up with it. And most people will choose to put up with it, and it's horrible. And
Yeah.
that's not a very nice thing to think about. But that's the reality of it. You can't.
Yeah.
You can't give the mouse a cookie and not expect him to ask for a glass of milk. That's just not how it works. It's
That's
just
the
Nice
example
throwback to
you
that
use.
children's book.
yeah.
That could make for a great one, yeah. The example you used reminds me of the latest Tim Burton movie. What was the name? Big Eyes. I don't really like it a lot, and that's quite relevant to the example you used because it's based on a true story. Basically a woman who painted a very strange type of paintings. Her husband pretended to be the artist behind the paintings,
Yeah, I
and
remember that.
and sold them, and he became a huge empire thanks to this, and she had to paint and pretend that he was the one that painted everything. And the thing is, I kind of liked. It might be because of the actor. Really, the actor is amazing. I can't remember his name because I'm dumb. But I really fucking love this actor. He's amazing. He's brilliant. So I loved the husband more than the woman, even though she is the victim. The man totally stole her work and manipulated her and everything. So that he's a terrible man. But the thing is, I don't feel sorry for her, because even though he stole her work, well, she still went for a swim in the swimming pool that he bought. She still slept in the same bed. She still
Right.
enjoyed exactly this life, and sadly he was right. They got rich because he found the fucking way to make them filthy rich, and she enjoyed the rich life. And then she is miserable because of it. Of course she is. Someone stole who she is. So she's no one. So she's nothing. She's nobody. Of course she has a huge nervous breakdown, but she still enjoyed the system. She still profited from the system. Yeah, she had to lie. Yeah, she had to lie to her own self and her own daughter and everything, but she still swam in the same swimming pool, and she still slept in the same bed and all. She still helped, and she still enjoyed it. So I can't feel sorry for that. I can't feel sorry for someone who has uh, in real life. Of course I'd feel sorry for her, but in the movie I can't.
Well, here's the thing, and this goes along with stuff that I tell people about, like sexism in the workplace and stuff. In that movie, the gallery owner only agreed to rent the wall out to the man, and instead of saying no, fuck you, that's terrible, how could you do that, they both consented to do that. And they got by on that con. They both went for it. So it's kind of like, you don't get to eat at the big kids table while still getting treated like you are at the little kids table. Like, it just, if you're going to do that, you have to accept the benefit and the detriment of that association. And it's just like, I have stood up when somebody said something to me at a workplace. I have stood up and walked out because I did not consent to being treated like that. And when you stay, you consent to being treated like that.
Yeah, exactly. You have made the choice. I don't mind. I don't mind this type of corruption as long as it's accepted. Yeah, I kind of accepted being corrupted. I kind of accepted. Yeah, I fucked with the boss to get a promotion. I did, and I'm fine with doing that. Oh, well, you're fine with it. I don't find this good that you did that, but at least you're fine with it, and that's how you live your life. And as long as you can sleep with yourself, go ahead, keep doing this. I have more respect for the people who are aware that they're corrupt and are getting along with it than the ones who say, "Oh, I'm such a poor soul that was pressured into this situation." No, you weren't pressured. You saw what the advantages were and what the complexity, the consequences, the negative consequences were, and you weighed them down. And in the end, you thought, "Hey, I guess I can live with this. I guess I'll say yes. Yes, maybe it's difficult what is going to happen, but hey, I'm fine with the difficulties because the advantages are worth it. And if you end up saying, "Oh, but that's terrible, I shouldn't have done that," well, yeah, then you shouldn't have done that. And I know it's
Well,
always easier to say after it's happened and all that, but it's it's difficult to tell you. What annoys me is when you have those people that tell you, "Oh, my situation is so complicated with my boss and all that and this," and you say, "Well, then why don't you stop?" And they say, "But I can't stop. There's this and then
money,
there's that," and
yeah.
then you keep working, you keep doing this specific thing because you have perfectly good reasons to keep doing them. Yeah, but that's difficult, etc. Yeah, either it's difficult and you can't do it and you stop, or it's what you chose to do, and
Are you
yeah, I
saying
guess
that
it's
they
difficult.
want the cake? They want to eat the cake and still have the cake in front of them? Is that what you're saying?
Kind of. They. It's more of the notion that they feel bad about the situation, but they are still enjoying the fact that what the
Right.
profits from the situation. And I can really I can yell at them, or I can talk to them like a child, or I can throw my hands in the air, or I can do whatever the hell, and they will
Well,
never ever look at the fact that this is what they have chosen. This is their
and when
decision.
I was always really passive in my life, and it caused a lot of issues. And like even now, like I find like even if I'm just trying to be nice to someone, and I don't want them to feel bad and things like that. Like some people like that, like if you're just like passive with them and you're like, "Oh yeah, that's nice. I'm not really comfortable with that." Don't do that. It's just like unless you're explicitly like sometimes like no, fuck you. Like some people won't stop, and that's an unfortunate part of life, but you have to be like if someone is trying to do wrong to you or is trying to do wrong in general and take you along for it, like you have to be explicit with those people. You
Mhm.
can't just go along with it and then be like, "Oops,"
Yeah,
because it will never stop. It will keep if the person is a con person or they're doing corrupt things, but you really like their products, you like their phone. Oh, Apple is terrible, but I've got 3 of their phones. Like you are
yeah, definitely.
consenting to that
Yeah,
happening, and they're like, "Oh well, people are going to buy it anyway." It's like, okay, but you don't have to do that. Like it's just I get really tired of people being like, "Oh, I hate this company," and they evade their taxes, and then you see them shopping there the next day. And I'm like, they're like, "Well, they have really good prices." And I'm like, "What is wrong with you? Like,
yeah,
exercise your consumer power."
yeah, exactly. That's oh my God, that's terrible that they that Apple kills so many Chinese basically slaves in China, but I guess that I can't afford to lose my Mac. I can't afford
Right.
lose my new iPhone. Like, why the fuck you can afford other computers, you can afford other phones. Why is this the one? Why don't you
Why are
stop?
all these companies I keep giving my money to so terrible? It's
Because
like,
every single time they do something terrible, you still buy their shit.
and people have that whole like defeatist, like, "Oh well, I can't make a difference." It's like, okay, but you know in your heart that you are being honest and sticking to your guns, and then other people will see that and they will do the same thing eventually. Like, you don't have to. Like, the defeatism kind of removes your ability to complain, in my opinion, because it's just like, well, you're still consenting to that. Like, it's like
Yeah.
living with a murderer after you know that they murdered someone.
Again, I wouldn't mind someone that comes to me and says, I don't give a shit about Chinese workers that kill themselves
Right.
or die, etc. I don't give a shit. I want my Apple product. Yeah, that's terrible what's gonna happen, but hey, that's life. I can't do anything about it, so I'll do it. I'd have more respect for that person than for the one thing, oh my God, what Apple is doing, that's terrible, but the iPhone 6 is really fucking cool. Yeah.
It's like the government should come in and do something about them while still giving me my iPhone. That's kind of the attitude, and I'm just like, that's really stupid, dude. Like, come on.
Yeah, That's the way things work. And
I
we
just,
all, to be fair, we all have this kind of hypocrisy in a way.
of
But
course.
again, what matters isn't necessarily that you don't have this hypocrisy. It's that it you make sense with it. It fits your.
It's the
Uh,
self-righteousness that gets me, not any of that. Because, yeah, we all are like, wow, like they're really mean to cows, but I'm going to have a hamburger. Like, I get
mm,
that. But, like, I'm not, running naked through the streets covered in cow blood saying you're all terrible people for eating meat either. So
that
that's
reminds
kind of
me.
my take on it.
That reminds me, when I heard about it, I just exploded. You remember Kony 2012? Obviously, we all remember it changed everything in the world. It was so important, and personally, it was the most obvious experience I had with the notion of you guys just don't give a shit. You don't actually give a shit. You just want to feel good about yourself, and so you'll share this on Twitter and be able to say, I'm helping so much. I'm helping. Anyway, Connect 2012 happened, and the guy that made everything happen uh, became kind of crazy, and it all ended. It all kind of ended when he had a nervous breakdown from all the attention, and he became a celebrity overnight, etc. He went in the streets in broad daylight, pulled his pants off, and masturbated, just like that,
Okay.
in the fucking streets.
Yeah, but who hasn't done that?
Oh, God.
Good point.
Apparently, if
Good
you're
point.
looking for Coney, that's what you have to do.
But yeah, that's the thing is. The thing is, indeed, people want do these things because they want to feel good about themselves, and that's more important. That's more important. And Apple is doing exactly what people want with all those news and those magazines that are pressured into this and that. Yeah, Apple are giving me exactly the news that make me feel good. They will give me the news about this and that, and even if they upset me, even if it's about the fact that these people died, etc. Well, it was tailored specifically for my interests, for my tastes, and for my opinions, etc. And so I feel good. Yes, I am right in doing what I do. I am right. I am a good person. Proof being, look at this article that I was sent by Apple News. And
Yeah.
that's scary. That's not really scary, to be that honest. It doesn't scare me. That just kind of, at some point, just stop. Stop consuming the news that you stumbled upon. People don't stumble upon news, they find exactly what they were looking for. On the internet, you don't find stuff by accident. It's not just my grandma sent it to me. No. You looked at it, you read the entire thing, you remembered it, you focused on it, you shared it, you wanted other people to know that you read the article. That is what mattered most. That is what matters most on the internet, on social media. Look at what I show you of myself. This is who I want you to think I am. Not necessarily who I am, but who I want you to think I am. And Apple knows exactly that, and so they're selling us exactly that. Look, you can control how you look to the rest of the world. You can pretend to be this kind of person just by clicking a link, just by paying $16.99 a month.
That's a
Oh,
WoW
that's easy.
subscription.
What
Yeah,
did
I
you
could
say,
be a
Jay?
better person by playing World of Warcraft.
Yeah, yeah. People sell their identities. People sell their selves because it's more complicated to be than to look like you are. Anyway, that was my case. What how do you call that enemy? What I really enjoy in writing and all that is giving names to the creators or the characters. It's always very interesting to see that the names mean a lot of things for the person creating.
Well, this is just my rendition of a goblin, which, of course, has taken many forms in various games, but, you know.
I think he looks really good, and I think this is something that you should develop once we get through the next few months.
Hey, you should put him in Seedscape.
We probably could.
Too scary.
Yeah.
Three spoopy for me.
uh,
I like his shocked thing where he gets slapped.
Yeah.
He's like, why are you going to hit a naked goblin with glasses?
Wouldn't hit a guy with glasses, would you?
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say, but I really fumbled it badly. Oh my god. I don't know, I actually like the little goblins, because you could, for different levels, you could definitely, like, dress them differently.
Yeah, that's why
like,
I had those.
That's
why I
a
had the one in the...
You don't need this full frontal nudity.
Got sort of that scrapped together, like he's got a helmet with his nose sticking through it and some leather pants and
yeah.
no shirt.
It's kind of one of those cool things where you can't really tell he has a big nose until you give him the helmet, and it just works.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amusing. You're right.
It's pretty fun.
You didn't discuss a lot during our RNs and generalize. Do you have something to say on our topics, Jason?
Well, for me personally, I don't really like doing the whole... I hate just the idea of like showing off to other people what you want them to think of you, and I really hate all that fake crap. Like, I just...
Yeah.
Just over the years, as you get older, you just sort of want to say exactly what you think about everything, and if nobody likes it, then fuck off. It's like, I don't really care anymore about that sort of stuff. Like, it bothers me that... It sort of like bothers me that they're trying to take advantage of people in that way, but then there's also that other side of me that's like, well, if you're dumb enough to be taken advantage of in that way, then fuck it. You know?
I perfectly get what you mean.
I mean, I'm definitely of two minds. It's like I'm not 100% in one way or the other. Like, it's sort of that part of my head that's like, I don't like people being scammed at all and things like that. But I also sometimes people get scammed in ways where I'm like, dude, that was so obvious. You almost deserve to be scammed. You know what I mean? Yeah, it's sort of that, if you're really going to be manipulated by all this crap, then I don't know. I'm not going to go out of my way to make it better because...
Are you suggesting that evil thing known as personal responsibility?
Yeah, that's the part where... Because I'm like an American left sort of dude, so people expect the personal responsibility thing from me very little, but I'm actually a big proponent of that, so...
I don't know, though, because like the original American left was very much about personal responsibility. I don't think you've changed. I think the left has gone more left. Because, like, remember back when, like, Republicans were, like, trying to censor games and saying that they affected people and things like that? Like, it was liberals advocating personal responsibility, and I was right there with them. I was like, yeah, this should be a personal responsibility and a parenting thing, not the game developer's job. And like,
now it's like the far left thing to actually be the people trying to censor games, which is
right.
weird.
So I don't think you've changed. I think like you and I, even though our countries kind of differ on what constitutes what, we're both what's known as like classic liberals. So like, we do believe in helping people and, you know, looking after people and paying your taxes and all that shit, but we also don't believe in controlling how people think and feel and what they want to see and what they want to show, you know, like let their kids play and things like that. So I don't know. I think
it's just generally, I always say it's like, I think it's good to help people who can't help themselves, but then like after that point, it's like, I mean, if you don't need help anymore, then you should probably be cut off. And I have like weird views, like about certain things. Like, I think if someone is like keeps having babies, and they like if someone's on welfare and they keep having babies, then at what point do you cut them off? Like, because I think you have to, because they're
The
just like,
US does, but the UK
right,
doesn't. The US
like
cuts off at 5 babies, whereas the UK it's like none. You can have 11. It doesn't matter.
it's kind of like that whole thing with how you really shouldn't take in a bunch of stray animals, because what's going to happen is you're not going to be able to pay to keep them up, and then what's going to happen
Right.
is they're going to start breeding with each other, and then you're going to be like this cat person who has all these like dying like diseased cats.
And your house stinks.
And you're actually
Like,
what started from like a good intention, which was to help animals or whatever, turns into now you're actually torturing animals, because now you're making them live in like this squalor pit of
well,
of
and fuck
garbage.
people who just like move and leave their animals there, and those people have to take them in. Like that also pisses me off.
Yeah, but
Like
that's
where
how I
I
kind of
live,
feel about like things like safety nets for people who are just like
yeah.
making their situation worse, and yet we still keep like ramping up the payments to them to like keep giving them more. It's like, well, if you keep screwing shit up on purpose, we at some point we have to be like, sorry, but we have to like cut you off because this is getting out of hand, you know?
Mm. The thing, I'd say there's a difference between helping and educating. A
Yeah, well,
child needs to be
Yeah.
educated, and an adult, you're not supposed to educate an adult. An adult is supposed to be an adult.
they're supposed to already be educated by that time.
The thing is, sometimes it's easy to say. Sometimes adults didn't get an education.
Right.
Get an access to that education. And in the example of your mother having tons and tons of kids, the issue is if you stop giving her that financial help, well, what happens? She dies and her kids too, or they end
No,
up
they
in the
don't.
street.
Your kids don't die in the US from that, though.
No,
Like,
I know they don't die, but the thing is they end up in the streets, or they don't get a proper education, or she starts drinking and hitting them because that's all she can find to cope, or she has to find 5 different jobs to pay the bills, and because of that, the kids don't
but
have
at
an
what
actual
point is
parent,
that
etc.
your fault, though? Like, at what point is having 10 children your fault? Like,
Yeah,
after
but
the 5th one, you didn't say, maybe this was a bad idea, I should find something else to do. Like, I get that after they're here, and, like, you know, I've supported foster parenting stuff, and, like, my friend's mom was a foster parent, and I used to help them out and stuff like that. I've got no problem with that stuff. But to say that there's no point where you're like, okay, you need to stop this because you're making more mouths than 10 people could feed, let alone yourself, you gotta stop.
yeah,
And if you want housing and money, you have to stop this. And to say that, like, it's a human right to get free money, but it's also your human right to keep making children for that free money. Like, I think those two things are at odds with one another, because that's great when your nation is rich. But when your nation's going down the fucking toilet, you can't just keep paying for everyone's babies, because you're like, their population is ridiculous. There are more people in one state than we have in our whole friggin' country. Like, that's stupid. Like, you gotta stop.
Yeah, but again, the issue is what are the consequences of doing this and that? And if the consequences is that people are going to end up in the streets, etc., is that a good choice? And even if maybe that would actually educate.
They have found in places where they don't offer that support, people are more likely to terminate and not have those children, so they're not there to be in the street. So unfortunately, it's not a nice thing to think about. But at some point, if there's never ever a consequence for what you're doing for your children and you're never going to learn. You're just not. And I don't like to see kids suffer. Nobody does. But at some point, it is the mother's fault. It's not.
I totally understand what you're saying. The thing is, again, I'd rather have kids at home and the mother putting out those kids out of her pussy, but than those kids in the streets or those kids.
Well, I see what you're saying. You're saying like if the kids are already here, then you can't not care about. You can't like not care for them. But it's like unfortunately there's no solution yet where it's like, how do you prevent a person from making those shitty decisions where they're like draining everyone else in the first place. We don't have
exactly. That's
Like, this
have
one
solutions for
woman
that.
literally had 15 children, and the government cuts you off after 5 in the US, right? Which I think is good enough. She's like, who's going to pay for all my kids? Like, she had no sense that it was her responsibility, and I think America's kind of breeding a culture where it's like, if I have accidents after the fact, too bad. You have to take care of it because I shouldn't have to deal with the consequences of being hungry and blah, blah, blah because of my choices. Like, you have to understand that if you enable that to happen, it's going to keep happening. Whereas in other countries where they don't enable that to happen, it actually stopped happening as much and it drastically went down. And it's unfortunate that you may have to go through a couple generations where foster parenting funding increases and money for personal people goes down because you just can't you can't reward that kind of thing because human beings, it doesn't matter how poor of a memory you have, how low your IQ is, it doesn't matter. You can be conditioned to do something, and if you are conditioned to believe that it is your right to have money and not wear a condom, that is dangerous. That is maximum overload for any country.
I can't accept that. I'm sorry, I can't. I really can't accept this way of functioning. I'd put human safety the right word. Human rights. That's not necessarily the right expression, but that I guess that's kind of what I mean. Human decency. Way before societal advantages.
Okay, let me ask you this question. I work 110 hours a week right now. I don't have any kids. I can't have any kids. My neighbor has 20 children, and my neighbor runs out of money, and I am the only person in that community working and making money. Everyone around me has 20 children, and I'm the only one working. Is it justice for me to lose half my income for choices I didn't make? Is that justice?
No, I'm not talking about justice, sweetheart.
But that is justice. Justice is not letting people die in the streets, but it's also not taking from everybody else to make sure that you can keep being a human uterus.
Yeah, I'm not saying that's
I think people forget because it's filtered through the government that you are taking from other people to pay for those children. Like, I think that doesn't register.
You're confusing. It's not about justice. It's not fair. It's unfair that things are the way they are, but it's not unjust that they are the way they are. They are unfair because, yes, they are shitting on you, and you shouldn't be shat on the way you are shat on. You don't deserve this. You didn't do or not do things that should have gotten you in the situation you are in. The thing is, it's not unjust in the meaning that they are doing this specifically so that you are shit on.
It doesn't matter whether they mean it or not, though, when the result is the same. Like, it doesn't matter if you pushed someone down the stairs or you kicked them. Like, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, someone's at the bottom of the stairs.
But it's what I mean is, it's like there's a fire. There's a fire that starts tonight, and you lose all your stuff, and someone that has a ton of money and everything has lost nothing. Someone that had a great insurance against fire lost nothing, and you didn't have a great insurance and you lost everything, and that's unfair, but that's not unjust.
No, it's not unfair. It's not unfair if somebody else bought insurance and I didn't. How is that unfair? That's the opposite argument of what is being made, though. Like, if I don't want to pay $20 extra a month for insurance and I lose all my things, that's my fault. Even if I could afford it or not, it doesn't matter.
I get what you mean. Anyway, that's a big conversation we had that went way further than just FreezePeach. That was extremely interesting. I'm not at all complaining in the slightest. I enjoyed it a lot.
Well, you had to go and ask me what I thought, didn't you?
I'm glad. I'm always glad when I have with the conversations. I do hope that they manage to interest more people than just us. I find them very interesting myself. I'm glad we had you as well, Jason, today. Your stuff is new. We didn't have this kind of art style yet. It was about time we had some pixel art.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot for your presence and your insight.
No problem.
Do you have anything you'd like to mention, maybe?
Yes, everyone who's listening needs to buy Seedscape when it comes out.
Huge shilling, of course.
Otherwise, I'll kill them all.
You've sold your soul already. You're not a true artist now.
You need to buy the game so we can pay taxes and help people. There you go.
And help women have 20 children.
No. The US doesn't have that. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
Yeah. I would feel bad living in a country that doesn't have that, personally. Anyway,
I feel bad to a point.
Let's not go back to the topic at hand. Thanks a lot, everyone, for watching, and I hope it was interesting to everyone. Thanks again a lot to you, Jason, for coming over, and that was really swell. And obviously, thank you, Jen, for your presence, for your insight, for your intelligence, as usual.
For my hating babies and thinking
Exactly.
you should eat them.
You hate children. That was important to mention.
All right. Goodbye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, everyone.